budget, I don't know why we can't find a place to put them to work. I mean, they're gonna hire them anyway, it's not like somebody just gonna, you know, it's not somebody, they're gonna hire them anyway in January, for what you're saying, so why not put them to work if they're needed? Not if they're wanted, but I know they need one in finance, because our former county mayor and I had a long discussion over that. I told him he couldn't remove that person, but he did, you know. And I said that person, I thought by state law that person had to be in there, but he said it didn't. So anyway, I'm sure the sheriff needs his employees probably more than he's asking for. And I'm not against hiring them right away if we get to work out the budget.
All right, other options or other things at this point in time too. Because I know that was an issue that was raised. I mean, Mr. Ball was asking. I mean, what are some of the other thoughts here? Yes, but let's get to a point where
I'm gonna say again, ignoring the payment ain't gonna get anything done. Ignoring the sheriff's request is not gonna help combat crime and drugs in the county. And also, the rest, we just stay focused on the rest about the jobs.
So again, I'll not necessarily say but what are some of our suggestions to get to this endpoint?
I think everybody pretty much knows either you're gonna have the revenue or you're not, so, and I don't think right now, we don't have anything, right now coming in right this second that we lose, so.
Well, and one of the other things that I will sort of say that I think is important, and I know that like with economic development here, that we need to look at it, and I think that it's something that we need to be aware of. Although I think everybody would love to, including myself, I would love for us to be able to land like let's say a good manufacturing job that's going to pay people around let's say even upward close to $20 an hour, which would be wonderful for our particular county. But at the end of the day, you know what drives our revenue? It's sales tax growth. Guys, I mean, that's what you've got to have. If you want to look at with our land taxes not going up, and nobody wants to necessarily hear that or discuss it, but if we want to see more revenue coming in, it's got to come in the form of sales tax. I mean, a big companies, they're not going to pay enough an increase in property taxes, and in particular, I'm not complaining about this, but we're even looking at ways, is that incentivizing them that's property tax you're not going to see for 5 or 6 years. Guys, we got to be driving the sales tax revenue. And one of the reasons why, for the long period of time that we were in here, like for around close to 8 or 10 years, that there wasn't any property tax increases, because every year, if you look at sales tax revenue, increased dramatically. It's got to be in sales tax, and sales tax means we got to have more people coming here and spending their dollars here. That's where we're going to get money in the budget. Because at the end of the day, if we don't, then it is going to mean that our landowners are going to be, they're going to have to see an increase in taxes at some point in time. Unfortunately. Keep up with this. But going back to these budgets, where are we at here? What do we need to do? Again, I'm open to anything. I think the committee is. We just need to get some things out there.
I know we've talked about the additional new hires and everything, and I kind of lean with Mr. Lindsay that some of these, I believe, are warranted. Some of them are, it's not like we're cutting a position in one or two of the other places. It's just the funding. But I guess now, since this letter came out from the mayor and everything, and the timing of everything that took place in the finance meeting stuff, there's a little, and I'm going to say it to Lucas, and it's not towards you directly, but I have a little bit of untrust in the EDC, the new amount that we're going to put into the EDC, because of this, and I guess the timing of when everything come forward, and there's still really no set thing. So I'm kind of, there's just a little bit of mistrust on that issue, and I think that was what, $130-something thousand maybe?
Now, that was about the firemen. It wasn't about the additional funds for the letter. It was about the position and the need for that. It wasn't about the additional $100-something thousand to get to the $300,000 for the industrial park, to put forward a new industrial park.
just the timing of it, when
Yeah.
when this other
I
stuff
think
surfaced and everything.
when Lucas put everything back from the companies that, hey, if you're gonna offer a service, sure, it's a free service, I'll take it. If we wanted to staff and pay for their own fire department, just to have to answer calls at their property, then they would take that too, they'll take anything we give them, and we do wanna make them happy, and we wanna keep them here, but only by doing things that are justifiable in the budget. But when, the timing of the bypass coming in and getting some information on that, and the timing that some of the businesses got back to Lucas, kinda all coincided with this finance committee meeting. And then that's when the additional funds were asked for, two separate things kinda going on. And that letter was never meant to cause any distrust, you know, in Lucas, Skip, anything. It's simply the facts of how this kind of went down as far as the fire positions.
And I'll have to do that. I had someone to come and talk to me about the industrial park and asked me if I was for wheel tax. And I said, no, I am not for wheel tax. They said, yes, you will be. I said, why is that? They said, because you're gonna vote for the industrial park, because that's what you said, you want jobs in here. And I said, yes, I do. I want jobs, I want plants, I want this. And they said, well, how you gonna fund it? And I said, ain't nothing been brought up, nothing I know of. They said, yeah, they are. I said, not that I know of. So I sat there looking stupid, like I didn't know what was going on. So I called Lucas, and I said, you either tell me what's going on, or I'm gonna ask you to come down to the finance meeting, and we're gonna figure out what's going on. And then Lucas filled me in on a little bit of what was going on, and I said, if you don't come down there to the finance meeting and ask for your request, you're not gonna get nothing this year. And I said, because people don't know that we're in a position to get an industrial park, and it didn't just so happen to fall in the lap, but I'm saying it did, and now we know, and we didn't know before when we started filling out the budget, and that's when I said economic development comes first. Let's cut all these people half a year so we can have enough money without raising taxes, pay for EDC, try to get an industrial park in here to try to get jobs. If jobs are number one thing, we need to fund them. If jobs is not our number one thing, we don't need to fund them. And that's where I stand, because was anybody else here on this committee, did they know about the industrial park? Until I brought it up, till Lucas come?
And you wouldn't have until I had all my facts together, but part of that was my knowledge, and I guess in the budgetary process on the timing of that, but this was all of it happened as we were, as this, was going forward with the budget coming up. But, yes, and I again, will reiterate that my office is open to any building member to come look at it. I'm no love that, no skeptics, no plan hat.
And now I'd like to ask you another question. Before I ever come and talk to you about anything about helping plants, was this confined space not already on the table with the city of Newport and other people before I talked to you?
The confined space is how it started between our conversation, I believe, or what this talked about. No, it started with ISO. You asked me about ISO, and then I just got out of a meeting with our large employers asking for a confined space rescue team to be put together for them. So that request has been made by our industry to provide that service for them. So, yes, that's absolutely true.
So I did not come and confront you about it. We was talking about what had already been said. Is that not true?
When you called it Dave, I remember that was back in May. You asked about what would the ISO rating do to help out with insurance premiums for our insurance. Came back at conflicting responses back then on ISO. What they said they needed was the ISO rating was good, did not have the same effect that a confined space rescue team and having that availability would have on their premiums and what they need.
say, let me read this text from Mega Lucas. Do you remember when it was that Skip called you and asked you to contact the companies to see if they would be interested in additional training and services in confined space rescue? I don't remember the exact date, the first time we talked about it. Was it at a T-ball game? I'll have to look back and see when that was. He asked me to send out emails to all the industry leaders to find out what savings they would have on their insurance ratings for reduced ISO. That's when I told him about some requests from ConAgra, and their willingness to supply some equipment needs. My guess it would have been mid-June, and he said, never mind, way off, the emails I sent out the next day, and we talked about it May 23rd. So that's where I got my information from.
Well, I'm saying, at least I'm trying to keep what jobs we got here, and at least I'm trying to get something else in here.
As are every other elected official and person in this county. We all want the same desired outcome, we just have different tactics that we use to try to get it done. Like I use information, not manipulation.
How are we gonna do this, budget?
Well, that's a big issue. I mean, at this point, I mean, one of our things are, guys, I mean, we've looked at option A, we've looked at option B, we've had some things come on the table, nothing has necessarily come there. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, the only way we're gonna get this budget, you're gonna have to decide whether we're gonna work on A or we're gonna work on B. And then we can make changes, delete, add to, whatever. Looking at both of them, a little bit confusing. There's someone said we need to decide which budget.
all right,
we're gonna
okay,
go
you're
with.
right. So then if we're gonna look at that,
Let's do it the way we
now
want.
that's gonna have to come from the floor at this point in time, because I mean, I can't necessarily make those suggestions. But I mean, in some ways, if we could just sort of know, I mean, like, let's talk about the glaring issue here. I don't know, and again, we're gonna kind of talk about that. Again, and unless I'm just dense here, it's still not very clear to me if we want the sheriff's pay plan. I mean, I think that's our first issue, because I mean, that's one of those that kind of comes in. I mean, if we're in favor of funding the sheriff's pay plan, then we can work off of that. If we're not in favor of funding the sheriff's pay plan, then we need to work off of B. But again, both budgets lost by the same, I mean, it's in essence the same thing, it's 9 to 5. So I mean, people were moving around, and that's okay, and that's your right. But I just simply need to know, are we in favor of the sheriff? And I don't know how to do that, I don't know if we,
A roll call.
is that, can we do that?
I don't know, like, Mr. Woods, I think, is asking to speak.
Okay, can
Pleasure
we,
of-
yeah, I'll give you.
Pleasure of the court.
Can we do that, like maybe just do a roll call in terms of, and like again, when we go through that, just express that, again, you're not voting in favor of A or B, you're voting that I wanna work off of A or B, and whichever one of those is, I mean, so again, if you, whenever your name is called, if you say A, then I mean, that means you wanna work off of A. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't work off of B, and I'll use myself as an example, I'll work off either, but I have a preference. Alright, again, because I wanna get a budget done. As we're looking at this, I mean, and that's my preference, and as it's stated beforehand, is for A. I'll put that out there. But on the flip side of that, if we wanna work on B, that's okay. I just need to know that so that we can move forward, and that's a good suggestion, Mr. Lindsay. Mr. Woods, I'll give you just a minute or so to address. Yeah, real quick.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. We want you to discuss with y'all just briefly. I know we've talked about a lot of revenue we put into the general fund. See, we're at $3,608,000 in the last almost 6 years. We're up 158% from the prior administration. I mean, that's revenue that helps everybody in the general fund. So we're doing our part, and we continue to do our part. In your budget, option A, you've got 4 budgets that are sheriff, under the sheriff, that are personnel, the sheriff, special patrol, jail, and litter. In that, it's paid 25, 26, 27, pays 34. In that total, $223,720. To get to that point, we met several times in the finance meeting. We went back and did multiple revisions. We talked several times. Sheriff sent me emails at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sending them back at 5. I mean, we continuously worked on this since we submitted April 4th, and we've not stopped since. But in this budget, we give up $100,000 in vehicles to get to that $223,720. We also give up $45,000 in fuel. That's $145,000. Also in this budget, where the issue about employees not paid for all their time worked, 11 hours, there's an increase after talking with the finance director, the sheriff's department budget and the jail budget, there's a total increase of $39,334 to fix that issue moving forward. One thing that we've never asked for, and these are our core personnel budgets, in those budgets, there's $101,000 in special patrol that gets reimbursed for the school system. That's around 75%. That goes out of our personnel budget, it does not come back. In the bailiff, it's in our budget, it gets reimbursed 100%, that being $115,570. In litter control, it's a grant. Last year, that budget got $48,000, $178 back. Again, all this money totaling $264,916.25. We spend out of every budget, and we've never asked for reimbursement to our budget. So, you know, we're doing our part. I think we've come to a long road. We've come to a reasonable point, I think, on our end. We've talked to several commissioners. We appreciate all y'all's time and effort, because y'all put a lot of effort into it. You got a lot to deal with. So, trying to give you some simple, real facts. Again, the $223,720 in these 4 personnel budgets. You know, we give up 145 of vehicles and fuel alone. And then you're trying to fix the problem moving forward with 39,334. This 11-hour issue has to be addressed. And it's something to walk away. And, you know, the $264,000, we've not got reimbursed. We have reimbursed it. We walk away, fix this problem, still money in the bank for you. But again, we want to do our part. We're county employees, we're taxpayers, we're citizens. We want just as much as all citizens here. We want to do our part. I think we're doing our part. I'll take any questions.
Derek, let me ask you, I'm not against your officers there, that they get their pay raises for sure. But you can't compare the sheriff's department with the city. He's got so many more employees. He's got, I don't know, probably what, 3 or 4 times as many employees as the city's got. The city with their tax base and everything, they've got the money to give their employees those raises. And of course, you've got so much more responsibility. You've got a lot of employees. I don't know how many officers you got. I say you've got more officers. They got to know with your people in your annex, you know what I'm saying. And it's not that we're trying to shortchange anybody. It's just where's the money coming from?
That's a great point.
I'm for your employees. I've worked with them. They find much people to work with, you know, and so on. And I'm sure they deserve the pay raises you're asking for, but where are we going to get the money?
The thing to remember, though, Mr. Lindsay, is the plan that I have in place is not a compared plan to the city. It is at $2,700 less than their starting officers. And also, the other thing is this is not a pay raise plan. This is addressing employee retention. We are losing so many people that we're wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars, that we're nothing more than a training ground, and we're just, it's catastrophically affecting the jail and the sheriff's department. I have 15 people under my plan that are not receiving raises. If this was a pay raise plan, then those 15 people would be receiving raises. This is an employee retention plan. And in order to do that, you have to equalize.
True. I was just looking at your total budget that is against the city's police department budget. You know, that's got to be a big difference. I don't know what they're saying. It's got to be a big difference. Because you have got a lot more people, a lot more responsibility. So I'm not, like I said, if we can find the money, I'm for it. Like I said, we need to go with A or B1 and start.
Right, at this point, I think that's what we need to do, because we're still not really any closer.
And you gotta understand, the city doesn't have a jail, the city is not required to maintain the
I
courts.
understand that.
We're actually 4 departments, we're not just one.
Yeah, see, I say you got, that's why I told you you got a lot more responsibility. You got a lot more to look at, a lot more you need money for and so on. And that affects your employees, your officers getting the pay raises because you have to spend the money somewhere else. The odds that you want to, you have to, you need to. You know. But anyway, I just, you know, like I said, if we find money, I'm all for it. But once again, I agree with Mr. Green. I think one thing that holds us up is I would sort of guess that $400,000 been lost to the highway department too. Seems like we've been sort of pushing them in the background for the last 2, 3, 4 years.
Okay, at this point, let's go through and let's just, whenever your name is called for roll call, express, do we wanna work on option A or we wanna work, no, I'm just trying to get,
Yeah, it's not like
someone
it's a
to
law,
workshop.
just consider this just to be
Yeah,
discussion.
just so that we can decide, again, so that's one we know which one to work off better, all right? Go ahead, please.
Choose which
Love
one you wanna
Henderson.
work on.
Calvin Ball,
B.
Lonnie Ottinger,
B.
Clay Blazer,
A,
Cindy Hope,
B.
Terry Dawson,
A.
Andy Tripp,
A.
Shalay Benson,
A.
Ben Hicks,
B.
Robert Green,
A,
Mitch Fine,
B.
Brenda Roach,
A.
Skip Ellison,
B.
Jimmy Lindsey.
Hey,
well, so much for that, all right, so at this point in time, all right, now that does, okay, that actually tells us a little bit. We are, all right, so then at that point in time, all right, so not necessarily work on that. I heard that, I'm at a loss here. As far as what to move forward, a couple of you, is there any other area that we can kind of find some sort of an agreement on, that we can at least, all right, since we're having to work off of both before we can get to that point of A and B, is there any other aspects that we can look at that would fix it?
I've stated my personal feelings. I'd like to hear the rest of the commissioners speak up, voice their concerns and their wants, or desires to see for the county, not personally, but for the county. The best interest of the county.
I mean, any other commissioners have things to say, or ideas about how we go forward from here?
You know, I'll go off screen about the paving and the roads and stuff. If we don't get a start trying to do something with the roads, there's no need of buying no school buses, there ain't no need of doing nothing if we don't fix the roads. But it's just throwing good money after bad money. It needs to be fixed. I've been on this court 10-year thing, and if anybody calls you or calls me, they're complaining about roads. They complain about roads all the time, countywide, everywhere you go. Had people come to church Thursday from Hamilton County. First thing they said, how do you travel these roads over here? I mean, that's what we get. I think we need to, we can't just leave them out. And I know Ken Ford said he didn't want the money or I don't know his exact words he said, but, we need to look at that.
So what are you offering to put back in? That's what we need to know. We need to know what.
Yeah, I mean, because there, all right, then there's a couple of good options, there's a couple of good points there. All right, so if paving is our concern, then what do we, and I guess at this point in time, we can sort of work off either one. Where are we gonna find $400,000 to put back in their budget? Because you've either gotta raise taxes, or you gotta cut it out to something else. Where's that coming from? And again, and I think that was one of our issues that we sort of had encountered here.
So if you're raising taxes or not raising taxes.
I see.
Roll call, play, save time, do a roll call, or favor of raising taxes or not. And if they say no, then you don't need to worry about the $400,000, okay, go pay for it.
Okay.
That'll go at a time.
That's one option. All right, so at this point in time, we're just gonna do another roll call.
We'll go.
All right, and can we state it as this?
Yeah, I was about to say, it doesn't need to be stated as in favor of.
Yeah, again, because like I went ahead and say, I mean, if that's necessary, I think many of us would say would be in favor of, would a tax increase. But again, it's not necessarily saying that like that's something that I want.
They don't really
Right.
discuss it.
But then again, but the tax increase is something that's on the table. Because now, I mean, and we do know, and I think here's the other issue, and it's nothing wrong with any of our particular commissioners are out there, but we know that some of you, I know just philosophically don't want to see that go up. And so you're, no matter what the situation is, you're not gonna vote for a tax increase. And if that's okay, that is totally understandable. I just need to know that. I mean, I guess kind of go for it. Are we okay with doing that? Does anybody have an objection? Because I mean, again, it's not necessarily, doesn't carry any particular way, we're just trying to get a budget worked out here.
I'm not saying no, I'll stand.
All right, okay, then go ahead.
Bud Henderson,
No,
Calvin Ball,
No.
Lonnie Oddinger,
No.
Clay Blazer,
Yes.
Cindy Hope,
Me and Cindy don't understand the business. What you just.
Are you saying if it meant to fund the highway department $400,000, if it meant to do that, raising taxes?
Yeah, in other
Would
words,
you vote in
would you be,
favor of
is
it?
raising taxes an option?
Is that all you?
That's, I mean, it doesn't carry any sort of weight. I'm just trying to figure out here how we're gonna get a budget passed. So I mean, I'm trying to figure out what we can
We
work with.
can't put the 400,000 back unless you raise taxes.
And that's right, that's what we're saying. So I mean, in essence, right.
But they're saying $400,000 ain't gonna get 2 or 3 miles or
Well,
whatever, that's not solving the problems that Commissioner Lane.
All right, but I mean, if we're just trying to determine, would you be in favor of raising taxes, you know, in an effort to put that back in there? Just yes or no?
Yes.
All right, yes.
Terry Dawson,
If we put enough in there,
yes or no?
yes, I guess.
Andrew Tripp,
Yes.
Shalay Benson,
no,
Ben Hicks,
No.
Robert Green,
No,
Mitch Fine,
No.
Bryn Roach,
yes,
Skip Ellison,
No.
Jimmy Lindsey.
Yeah.
There's no way. There were more no's than yes. So at that point in time, and again, so that just sort of lets us know now, guys, we're not in favor, guys and gals, we're not in favor of seeing a tax increase. And we're, I mean, and I shouldn't say that the 6 people that voted for it, but if that was a future case. So since we know that's not on the table, getting a new source of revenue is not on the table. I mean, then you have a couple of options. I mean, if you want to put more money back into paving, now we can say it needs to be there all we want to, but unless you're gonna give me, cut this and add it to that, to paving, then I mean, that's not a viable option.
Mr. Chairman, could I call for a re-vote on these two budgets? A and B, let's vote again on these two budgets. We were tired while ago on which one we wanted to work on, just possibly we might get one of them approved.
All right, without any, the only thing I was gonna say, but now without any changes,
Vote again.
Is this secret what they work on?
no, this is, no, he's called for a revote. I mean, at this point, my understanding, and I know we don't have a second, my understanding, but the tie was, I mean, on which one to vote for, so that.
Yeah, that's why I thought he was doing that.
And I think that also what he said, the other point that Mr. Lindsey's trying to make, since it's clear that we're not in favor of a tax increase. So that, I mean, in theory, not necessarily that it will, but in theory, that should deal with the issue of paving. But if we have an issue on one of these, are there any changes that you wanna make to it?
is there a motion on the floor?
I mean, not really, we're trying to somewhat clarify that, so if you have a comment, go ahead.
I've got a question,
Okay.
and I don't guess I really got a total dollar amount. The 4% raise for county employees, how much does that cost? Do we have a pretty close dollar amount on that?
That's rough, and that's all funds, that's rough.
Roughly 300,000 with, from general fund field and highway.
That's rough.
So I mean, when we looked at that, that was one of the issues that we kind of came about, it was about, for each percentage point, just so that you're clear, that's about $70,000. And I know that like even in the general public, there may have been some concerns or issues about this, and I'll say whenever we initially got this out there, and one of the reasons why it was discussed, the initial budget budgetary request that was first sent to us that had everything funded was a 3% employee raise. And in essence, when we looked at that, one of the things that we found out was this year and I know Andy can probably explain this better, but just to sort of, in essence, what we saved in TCRS, the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, we got a savings in that from the county standpoint. So that kind of is a wash, and that kind of gives you an idea. If this were last year, that would be the same amount of money that we'd be paying per employee. We just found out that they don't have to pay that to TCRS, and that's why it was decided to give that 3% raise. The 4% came in budget amendment 4. Yeah, came in budget amendment 4. And at that point in time, I think we thought that budget was going to be balanced, but then that's whenever, again, where we had other issues that had come in, that funded the sheriff's department, that funded everything else. But then that's where we found out that there were these capital projects. That's where we initially had a need for 10 cents. That 10 cents, we then cut to 6 cents in budget 5. Then when we got to budget 6, it was a 6-cent increase with some other cut that was out there and a pretty low fund balance in the general fund. So that's where that's come about. So you're looking per percentage point, it's about $70,000, give or, and that's again very rough because whenever she works that out, but just for purposes of kind of thinking.
Mr. Chairman, was it ever brought up to give each employee the same amount of raise instead of going by percentage? You can't somebody making $30,000, somebody making $20,000. You're talking about one getting $1,200 raise, the other getting $800 raise. You go to Food City, food's gonna cost both of them the same. I know in the past we give like each employee $500 or whatever. It's been a while. I know it's been quite a while, I guess. But I don't know whether that helps city plan the budget or not. I really don't know.
2012 when we did that.
But I don't like the percentage raise much. It helps the guy on the upper end, but the guy on the lower end doesn't do as well. Or maybe it's better. I don't know whether that helps city or not.
Right. I don't know. And I know I'm still looking at the hand, but we did that one year at the end of a budgetary process when we hadn't given a raise through the year. And I think Love was saying 2012. I don't want to say that was it was about that point in time that was done that way. You might save a certain amount of money. Like you might save some money, but I don't necessarily know that. How much it's going to be. I will say the only, and it's not even a concern that I have. You're right when you give those percentage raises. It does sort of help the person on the top, but then on the flip side of that, throughout this entire budgetary process, and again, it's sort of picking and choosing, but we've heard this notion of fairness, and at the end of that, 4%, in essence, is fair, because, everyone's getting the same, they're getting the same percentage. But again, I think it's all how you look at it, you know what I mean? Because some people would say, let's say, and I'll just throw that random number out, $1,000 across the board is fair. But and then other people would argue that no 4% is fair. Again, it's the same amount, but it works into different things.
The way I look at that, and I kind of agree with you in the way I thought. I think years means a lot. You take a man that had 20 years in, I think he needs to earn more than a man that's got 5 years a year. That makes him have a percentage that won't work. That's what I tried to tell the sheriff the other night. I still feel that way. I think a man needs to build himself up.
And that's why we have that plan. Our plan addresses that. And also the thing to take into consideration too is our plan addresses a back pay issue that's gonna save taxpayers a minimum of $365,000. See, you all, the ones that are voting for Plan B, you're basically saying, hey, go ahead, you all sue, and you're gonna have to pay minimum $365,000 more. I have a plan that's saving taxpayers money. My plan fixes this back pay issue, guys.
So what do we want to? How do we want to? I know that we've had a discussion about that. Do you want to?
I'd like to make a motion that we vote again on Plan A, Budget A.
All right. So we have a motion to vote on Budget A. Do I have a second? All right. We have a second from Ms. Benson. All right. Any other discussion of that? Now, again, as I see that is that there's really no changes made. It's just Plan A as we saw it initially. All right. We're just making sure everybody is clear about that. All right. Any other discussion? Yes.
Which vehicle?
A,
I'd like to say Clay, for what
Okay.
it's worth, and it's nothing toward Armando or any of his staff or anything, but you know, I'd kinda gotten on board with thinking about this and everything, but you know, since the budget process started, all we've heard is lawsuit, lawsuit, lawsuit. And it's not been a fun adventure this year, not by any means. And I understand where they're coming from, but, I mean, it's been there from the start. And, you know, I don't know how to fix it, I don't know. But I do know a lot of citizens are upset that they're being threatened to be sued. I do know that. I found that out just this past week. There's a lot of citizens unhappy with that move.
May I address
And
that?
so,
May I address that?
we may quickly.
From the beginning, I have not stood up before you say, I'm going to sue you. I have not stood up from the beginning and say, I want to sue you. I have said from the very beginning that we have an essential need that has to be met. And if we don't get this essential need, I don't have any other option but to follow what the law says. And I have said numerous times, I have no desire to sue, but I have got to address this issue with your help. I'm not trying to strong arm you all. I've not stood up in these meetings and said, I'm going to sue you. Never, you'll go back and read things, and you will never find me saying one time that I'm going to sue you. Now, there's been discussion and brought up and people trying to bring that about and make it look that way, but that's not what I've been projecting. I have absolutely no desire to file a lawsuit. None. But I have an absolute responsibility to meet the needs of the jail, the sheriff's office, and effective enforcement in this community, and I cannot do it without your help. And if I don't get your help, I have to take and follow the law. That is what I said from the beginning.
Well, you remember that night that Cindy come up with a plan to bring those of the sheriff's department that was making less, starting out up. Nobody agreed with that either?
We did with Mitch. We did. We took Mitch's recommendation and
No,
we.
not that night. Me and Cindy was the only one voted for it. The other three voted against. That's not you got upset. Because we sat there and figured we had 13 individuals from the sheriff's department that we brought up to 24,000, and then the others was going to get, you said because the ones starting out needed to be brought up, and that's what we did. It failed. There was 5 of us. We voted for it, 3 voted against it.
We did our part. We did that. And I got upset because, ladies and gentlemen, we have shown you transparency from the very beginning. We have shown you all the revenue that we've been bringing in. And I have explained to you, and I have said this again, I just lost 2 more senior jailers. I'm in the process now of having to get rid of state inmates, which are revenue-making inmates, and we're so overcrowded. I don't have experienced people managing and maintaining a jail. I have a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing, which is causing a huge liability on the county.
Any other discussion or question? If not, roll call.
Bud Henderson,
No.
Calvin Ball,
No.
Lonnie Ottinger, Clay Blazer,
Yes.
Cindy Holt,
No.
Terry Dawson,
Yes.
Andy Tripp,
Yes.
Shirley Benson,
Yes.
Ben Hicks,
No.
Robert Green,
No.
Mitch Fine,
no.
Gwen Roach,
Yes.
Skip Ellison,
No.
Jimmy Lindsey.
Yes.
6 days, 8 nays.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, we vote on budget B.
There's no amendments. There's no changes, just straight up budget B.
Yeah, I like how that fireman taken out of it, but let's vote it like
Well,
it
you,
is.
now, you have, right now, with an option in the budget, you can make a change, you can make any changes that the member
I'd
wants.
like to have the fireman removed. leave
Right,
it
so
as-
option B with the fireman's position removed. Alright, do we have a motion? Right. Do we have a second? Is there there a second to vote on option B with the fire department position? All right, seconded from Ms. Kingston. All right, any other discussion on that?
Mr. Elson can't vote again. That's on that amendment.
So we can't vote on this. Yeah, roll call, I'm sorry.
Love Henderson,
Yes.
Calvin Ball,
No.
Lonnie Ottinger,
Yes.
Clay Blazer,
No.
Cindy Holt,
Yes.
Terry Dawson,
No.
Andy Tripp,
No.
Shalay Benson,
No.
Ben Hicks,
No.
Robert Green,
No.
Mitch Fine,
No.
Gwen Roach,
No.
Jimmy Lindsey.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, you might as well send the finance committee back to another meeting. We got one more Monday to meet. You're gonna have to find a combination between these two budgets some way. You're gonna have to.
Well, I mean, I would agree with you, Mr. Lindsey, but there's a couple of issues that I have with that, and it's really, it's no, but we can go I know there are a couple things, we can go back and have another committee meeting, all right, but let's think about this, for example. I mean, if we can address all these issues, and I'll have to say, I mean, at our last budget committee meeting, I mean, for the most part, I actually think everybody was there, but maybe 3 people that are here, 4, I mean, like at most. So, I mean, it was basically the same, I mean, and we sent what we thought were 2 options here that we could be able to settle on one of them. I mean, I really felt like, I thought that one of these 2 would pass pretty easily. But I mean, one of the things I was wanting to say is we have people, again, that have voted no on both budgets.
Calvin, Ben, and Robert Mitch.
Right.
No on both sides, so what can we do? What are you looking to see in a budget that we can balance?
What is option C, like here that started and didn't continue with, discontinued? What is the option on that?
We had talked about putting 200,000 back in paving, putting the, county employees to 3% and remove fire positions.
But now, one of the options with that, because Ann did not work that up, I'm not sure if that would be a balanced budget. And I'm not trying to put any words into Ann's mouth.
Yeah, it's still gonna be off, but.
Yeah, I mean, and so then we're gonna have to look at, because it was gonna be off, and I don't know how many pennies we would need. Like, I think that we sort of thought that if you did that it would, cause again, let's just look at this, and I guess the closest one that would be with option
Yes.
B.
Yes, it is.
Option B has a fund balance of $237,000. If you add 200,000 to pay it, put that back in, that leaves $37,000, and if you add, if you take the 4% down, I mean, that would give you about,
We were gonna have, speaking to that particular option, and I'm gonna try to go over those things again. That was to keep the sheriff's pay plan. Right, Shalay, I'm trying, the option we discussed was to keep the sheriff's pay plan.
Yes.
It was to reduce all other county employees down to 3% and remove 1 fireman's position. And those were the main things, but to keep only $200,000 in capital projects. Again, we had a budget with no tax increase. We had some money in paving. And it did get us down to a really low, I'm gonna say, fund balance in the general capital projects budget, which we thought we might be able to maintain, because normally whatever we budget in the general capital projects budget, we spend pretty much almost exactly that amount. We only picked up a little bit in the general fund because most, or at least half of the position, I would say, are really about half of our positions in the general fund are sheriff's department positions. Either the sheriff's department or the jail are related. So you don't pick up as much money as you might think by going from 4 to 3.
So we didn't pick up as much, I tried to kind of look at that as quickly as I could. By going down with that plan, taking out one fireman's position and the 3% for all other county employees, you pick up about a penny. I'm saying about $50,000, so the fund balance looked pretty weak. I can't remember off the top of my head what that was, but that's about what you get. We were looking at kind of a weak, unappropriated fund balance. So that was kind of what we were looking at.
Wasn't it 47,000?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Wasn't it 47,000 fund balance?
Something, I think that was about right, and I'm gonna see.
But now, there were two reasons why I know that we didn't move forward with that.
Yeah, I was gonna see, I might actually have it.
One of them being whenever we were then, of course, and whenever the department head from the highway department says, that $200,000 is kind of not even worth receiving. Well, that was our main reason why we didn't develop an option C. Because we had talked about some other things, and in his essence, he said $400,000 wasn't much, but half that was almost not even worth fooling with. Now, again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but those of y'all that were there, that's kind of the essence. That's why option C never really got off the ground.
If you went with C, and you took the 200,000 away from the paving, and the 1% away from the employees, would that leave enough money for the sheriff?
Well, I think option C had the sheriff's claim funded, if I'm not mistaken.
That was
It
right.
already had it funded?
Yeah. It had the sheriff, when we talked about, it had the sheriff's it had the sheriff's claim funded. It had a low fund balance of like $47,000. It gives it gives county employees 3%, not 4%. But it does fund the sheriff. It has paving.
Has a little, it had about $200,000 in paving. In fact, I had some of my notes. I actually remembered I had this little pad here. It took some money